Welcome to the Be Ready Utah PrepCast. I'm Wade Mathews, the Be Ready Utah manager here at the Utah Division of Emergency Management. In emergency management, we like to talk about being prepared and aware of all of the hazards and risks where we live. And in this day and age, that includes crime and violence and terrorism. Joining me today are Travis Scott, the Deputy Director, and Cody Dunn, an intelligence analyst at the Utah Statewide Information and Analysis Center. Thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having us.
Sure. Now, first of all, let's start. What is the Statewide Information and Analysis Center that probably a lot of people haven't really heard of, but we do here in our business call the SIAC, right, as the nickname there?
Right. So one of the things that you'll probably hear as a common term is fusion centers. And so we're basically part of a network of fusion centers. So what happened is kind of out of 9/11, we figured out that we didn't really do that well with information sharing. And so this concept of fusion centers kind of started up. And so we are one of those fusion centers, one of the 80 in the network. And as part of that, our job is basically kind of filling that gap of information sharing. So trying to get locals to feed information about criminal intelligence and also getting information from the feds and making sure that that kind of gets down to our local partners. And we kind of fill that role of information sharing and moving that information back and forth. And one of the ways that we do that is actually through our liaison network. So we kind of try to set up groups or get individuals connected with us in all of the different departments of public safety, law enforcement, fire, EMS, emergency management, and kind of create those human networks, if you will, so that when we get certain information, we can make sure that we are able to pass that information down to those who could feasibly use that information to help protect our communities or catch bad guys, things like that.
Which is where I was going with the next question. What is your ultimate purpose and goal with all of that networking and that huge structure? It sounds like you're talking about with fusion centers all over and that information sharing. What's your main goal and purpose for the State Information Analysis Center?
So obviously it's to be that hub of information sharing, but what information are we trying to share is really the kind of like the criminal information. We're trying to get the information out to the public, the communities. Hey, you guys are part of this network, if you will. If you see something, you can say something. And then also make sure that law enforcement is equipped with the kind of information that they need to be aware of threats of terrorism or threats from organized crime, things of that nature.
So it's not exactly cloak and dagger, or is it? What are some of the resources that you use to accomplish these things that you're talking about?
So a lot of it is really just information sharing, making sure that we are communicating new trends, tactics, just criminal trends that you see on the news, and making sure everyone has a good situational awareness of what's going on in the communities. So they're not, things aren't coming out of the blue. We're working, sharing information, just making sure that everyone's aware of it. Kind of the opposite of cloak and dagger. In fact, we're trying to be very open about these are the new trends, these are new tactics, these are what we're seeing, and then how do we use that information to better equip our communities to prevent that crime. It's no different than community-led policing, where you share information with your neighbors, and we do the same thing with our other local law enforcement agencies. So something that's happening in southern Utah, we can alert that trend for agencies in northern Utah, and hopefully in the future prevent that similar thing. So we don't see the same cycle. We're actually breaking that cycle of either violence or crime.
And can you talk about a little bit some of the new trends or some of the new projects or ways you're approaching this?
So one of the big things we've started focusing on a lot is special events. Traditionally, it was always we go from one event to the next. So whether that be a marathon, state fair, arts festival, things of that nature. And our new idea is a more comprehensive approach where it's now just an ongoing cycle. We're not going from one to the next to the next. We know we're going to have special events, and the big concern and the phrase that we're now kind of getting into the community is soft targets and crowded spaces. And what we've seen with the new kind of trends is, after 9/11 was a terrible time for the country, and we were worried about terrorism and foreign actors coming in and having these very violent acts. In the past couple years, those tactics have changed. So smaller community events, much like the ones in Gilroy, California at their, the festival they were having, church-based attacks throughout the nation, school violence, and even just in things along that nature. So when we talk about previous to now, what we're doing is we're growing and we're learning. And so special events are a big one, and we are now moving along that route where it's no longer one to the next. It's a constant process that we are constantly evolving, working to communicate, sharing information, and really how do we bring all these communities together to work together to protect themselves and to protect each other.
Now, we want ultimately to get the public to take action, right? That's our goal, take action towards preparedness, towards prevention, vigilance, all those different types of things. What kind of resources or what kind of ways would you like to see the public take action towards helping you and your goals and purposes?
So traditionally the public is very aware. If they've traveled anywhere in the past 10 years, they have seen the Department of Homeland Security's See Something, Say Something campaign, which is great. We actually have a new updated video to talk about that and to share with everyone. And
what's the name of that video? We have that. We're going to play that here, but what's the name of that video? Or am I putting you on the spot there all of a sudden? Sorry.
I actually don't know what the name is.
That's okay. We're going to see the name of that video probably right here on the front of the screen. So we're going to pause here, play that video for you, and we'll come back and talk about it some more.
I'm a firefighter.
A teacher.
I'm a farmer.
A manager.
I'm a barber.
A waitress.
A student.
A mom.
We're all part of your community. We live in small towns and big cities.
On farmland
And concrete.
Every day we move in and out of each other's busy lives.
It's easy to take for granted all the little details that make up our everyday.
The morning walk,
That familiar engine firing up.
The bus stop friends.
a hot cup of coffee.
that guy who can never seem to parallel park.
Every day brings surprises.
Flat tire.
Midday traffic.
Bus delays, again. There's always something unexpected.
And honestly, that's fine.
It's when you experience a moment of uncertainty.
Something you know shouldn't be there.
Or someone's behavior that doesn't seem quite right.
These are the moments to take a pause.
Because if something doesn't feel right, it's probably not.
It's not about paranoia.
Or being afraid.
It's about standing up and protecting our communities.
One detail at a time.
Because a lot of little details can become a pattern.
We
We trust our instincts.
Just like you should.
Because only you know what's not supposed to be in your everyday.
We all play a role in keeping our communities safe.
So protect your everyday.
If you see something suspicious, say something to local authorities.
Okay, a new approach. It looks like kind of just we're all in this together. I think is the message from that, right?
Right.
It is. So I mean, the old message, and especially stuff you saw in when you were traveling, airports, bus stations, things like that. It was very terrorism related, heavy, and really what it is we're really preaching the suspicious activity and behavioral aspects. Again, See Something, Say Something was never based on person's skin color or religion or belief system. It really is a behavioral-based approach of simple things that were criminal in nature that could lead and possibly be indicative of terrorism-related planning. But as we've seen now, we are now dealing with a lot more lone violent shooters, behavioral-based threats. And so really, how do we work with our communities to educate them and to expand on that? I mean, we are looking for those very simple things. People becoming, disengaged, people in the workplace who are expressing, violent ideology. So how do we constantly improve this cycle to, prevent that kind of violence and, just trying to give everybody that approach? And we've really seen that working with the community, because communities, I mean, who knows that best? It's the people who are living there every day. And I mean, one community to the next, I mean, even different parts of Utah, the community knows what's normal and what's not. And so how do we work with them, and how do we get people to communicate that stuff to follow up on it?
Right, and there are some resources to help the public know what some of those signs are. And there's a couple of them here. We've got some of these brochures. Recognizing the signs of terrorism-related suspicious activity, the pathway to violence warning signs, and what you can do. Now, where can these be found? These are on the DHS website, is that correct? Or
So you could find some of these resources from the Department of Homeland Security under their See Something, Say Something campaign. You can also access some of that information on the Utah Department of Public Safety's website, including the SIAC's website, which is siac.utah.gov. And we'll have resources available on there so they can go there. They can look at some of the new videos and then also download some of these new flyers and handouts to kind of get you thinking into that mindset, whether, again, threats can happen at any time and any place we've now seen. And so really it's a change in mindset of people, and hopefully these resources will kind of spur that conversation.
maybe a last question here, off the cuff. Is there anything that you can talk about where you've been successful in keeping Utah safe through some of these activities, through these Fusion Center intelligence sharing methods? Is there a success story that you could share with us?
We've actually had a number of one. One of the big ones we actually had, and as odd as it sounds, it actually didn't keep Utah safe, it actually kept Virginia safe. We were called one evening, and a female up in the Davis County area actually saw something on social media and said, this isn't right, and it was a directed school threat. She actually informed her parents, and that started a long process of identifying where the threat was. And as we worked the threat, we found out it actually wasn't in Utah at all. It actually was in Virginia. So as we communicate with our role in the Fusion Center network, we originated a threat here in Davis County. And that threat took it across the state to some different locations, and then we determined it wasn't here at all. We put it out to our network of Fusion Centers, and the threat actually originated in Virginia. And because of that information, the information was shared to the local agencies, and they were actually able to help identify some juveniles who were making threats to a school. So again, social media has really opened our world up and how we communicate with each other, and that's only one small one. We've had a number of successes with the program.
Travis, did you have one in mind as well that you wanted to share?
I was just going to say, in general, the mechanisms that we've been talking about, our liaison officers and the reporting and, what we're putting out there about the pathways to violence, behavioral indicators, we get all sorts of reporting coming in all the time, whether it's through examples like that, where it's citizens, or through our partners with the FBI or local law enforcement. And we've had many different successes, especially in the realm that Cody's kind of talking about with the schools. That's heightened for some reason. There's a lot more school threats, and we've had a lot of successes here locally where we've received those kinds of tips, whether it was a threat that originated on TikTok or Snapchat or wherever it was, and it was kind of an implied threat to a school, and we've been able to work with our liaison partners at the local level, many different law enforcement agencies here in Utah, to get that information out and kind of get that mitigated or investigated to see if it was actually a threat or not. And we've had quite a few successes from that. Yeah.
And that's awesome. And personally, I'm really glad you're here. I'm glad you're doing what you're doing, that you're watching this information, sharing this information, and preventing crime and terrorism. And on behalf of the public, we appreciate that greatly. So, and again, the website, one more time, that people can go to get this information, watch the video again. Your website is
SIAC.utah.gov.
Okay, SIAC.utah.gov. All right. Anything else you'd like to add?
I just want to encourage the people, if you see something suspicious, again, as you guys were just kind of talking about, sometimes it's a very small piece of the puzzle. And so we rely on the community to reach out to the local law enforcement, report even minor things, because that could be part of a much larger puzzle, and that's what our role is to do.
Is put those pieces together.
Yeah, and to, again, you may see only one small piece of that, and it could turn into something huge, which we've also seen. So I encourage people to work with their local communities, work with their community groups, and then, really communicate with local law enforcement to share information, and then they will share it with us in turn, and then we can help to kind of prevent some of these threats. We do some outreach with some of the faith-based communities who've seen a number of attacks this last following couple years. And so really, it's got to be a community approach.
Okay.
And if I may add, actually, one of the things that we're preaching with this reporting is one, if it seems like it's an emergency, we of course want you to call 911. We don't want you calling us directly, but if it is something that we've been talking about and you feel like it's out of place, but it's not an immediate threat, then we do or would like you to contact us via SARS@utah.gov.
SARS
at utah.gov.
utah.gov. Okay.
And there is a tip line that is 1-833 DPS SAFE. And that is actually a statewide tip line where they can report non-emergency tips to the SIAC directly.
And we've put that up on the screen too for people to see that as well. All right, we're out of time. Thank you so much for being here, Travis and Cody, again, and talking about this with us, and for all that you're doing out there. Again, go to these websites. If you see something suspicious, call the tip line and take some action. Thanks for watching the Be Ready Utah PrepCast.
Hey, hope you enjoyed this episode of the Be Ready Utah PrepCast. Like what you're seeing? Have a question about anything related to emergency preparedness? Or do you have a comment about something you've learned as you make a plan or get a kit? We'd love to hear from you. Comment or reply to us on Twitter or Facebook at Be Ready Utah with hashtag BRUPrepcast or in the comments on YouTube. We'll talk about it on one of the next episodes of the Be Ready Utah PrepCast. Don't forget to share these videos and your own adventures in preparedness with your friends, family, neighbors, and coworkers, because anytime is a good time to talk about emergency preparedness. See you next time.